This is a path He has called me to serve humanity, to understand the pain when love doesn't work for you, and the partners that you keep attracting are not healthy, and they only use and exploit you. But with that, I understand what is right, what is wrong. I understand the skill sets that we need to create and bring in the healthy, the love, the compassion, the understanding. So it's not through our best experiences that we learn what's right and wrong. It's through our worst experiences on this planet.
What you just heard is a clip from a conversation with our special guest, whom I'll introduce to you in a few minutes. I just wanted you to get a taste of what is to come. The title of this episode is Divorce and Sexual Trauma, How to Heal and Thrive. But that's not all this episode revolves around, because in this episode, you're going to hear our guest discuss why her marriage of 15 years did not live up to her expectations, especially in wanting to be a mom. You also hear how she fell for a sociopath after her divorce, and how he was able to manipulate her. And, I'll just let her tell that story in this episode. You don't want to miss this. And this is episode 69, so stay tuned as we get the show started.
Hello and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, 𝐀𝐁𝐨𝐶.
Just a reminder, the Happier Marriage Podcast is on a mission to make marriage great again. And you're encouraged to join this movement by sharing this podcast with at least one other spouse. And let me say this. You may or may not agree with all that you'll hear, and quite frankly, you may be triggered by some of what you'll hear on this episode. But remember, that's one of the purposes of this show, right? To stir things up and then to take you in for what I call a solid landing. And you can always share your thoughts through making a comment below the in the video that also follows this podcast, or also in wherever you see this posted on social media or through an email. We'd love to hear what your thoughts will be on this episode. This show is brought to you by 𝐾hNGLGrant.com, where you'll find resources that are designed to help you in your marital journey. So make sure you avail yourself going to 𝐾hNGLGrant.com and see what's available for you. Our hope is that you'll be challenged, inspired, and encouraged in this episode as in every other episode. Stay tuned.
So, the big question is this. How is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
As stated earlier, we have a guest on the show, and her name is Gianny Adamo. You'll hear her talk about the issues I mentioned as only she can tell it. You'll also hear her advice at the end of the episode that you don't want to miss. Just to remind you that you can also watch the video version of this interview on my YouTube channel, 𝐀𝐁𝐨𝐿. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any and all the new videos that are posted there. So let me just tell you a little bit about our guest, Gianny Adamo. Now, Gianny is a psychotherapist, author, and a relationship expert. Let me add, a best-selling author, Amazon best-selling author. In 2011, 1 year after her divorce, Gianny founded Fearless Love to help couples create a new legacy where their families can flourish. And in 2018, she authored an Amazon bestseller, From Love Trauma to Fearless Love, 7 Tango Steps to breaking free from narcissists and predators. That sounds interesting, doesn't it? And the book is recognized with a prestigious Kirkus Reviews Recommended Book Award and also received the 2020 New Author of the Year Award by Audiobook Reviewer. Gianny's articles and contributions on relationships and heartbreak appear in YourTango.com, Bride, MSN, Glamour, PsychoCentral, Bustle, Amolo, and eHarmony, just to name a few. In her free time, Gianny enjoys traveling and dancing salsa and Argentine tango. So you can find out more about her on her website, fearlesslove.net, and the links will be found in the show notes below. Without further ado, let's welcome Gianny Adamo to the show. Thanks for joining me on the Happier Marriage Secrets podcast, where we are on a mission to make marriages happier again. Today, we have our guest, Gianny Adamo, with us. And Gianny, I'm so glad to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Hi, 𝐀𝐁𝐨𝐮. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. I've been waiting for this moment. I was looking forward to it. So I'm really excited to have you and to discuss some things that I believe will be very helpful to our audience. And one of the ways that we will accomplish our mission, Gianny, is to have people like yourself who will share your story and your expertise to help audience, for them to acquire skills and or learn from what is shared so that they can have happier and fulfilled marriages. So tell us a little bit about your life as it is now in the context of where you are in life and how you've gotten here.
Okay, so I actually would like to start how I got here, and then I'll tell you what I'm doing.
No, I know that's a very tempting thing. But
you'd rather have me tell you what I'm doing now?
Yeah. I'll set the stage of
it. Yeah. So I am a licensed mental health counselor and a certified relationship coach. And I work specifically with the realm of relationships, marriage, couples, love. Anything that has to do with that realm, the good, the bad, and the ugly, I handle. So I work with premarital counseling, couples who are looking to who are either getting engaged or cohabitating and trying to work out their relationship issues and decide the next step for their relationship, as well as for couples who are married and working out the disruptions to their intimacy, their connection, their bond, and work out a new vision for their marriage to flourish. So I work with them on all of that, as well as for those individuals who are divorcing or are divorced. I work with them and healing and being able to rebuild their lives and have a life vision for themselves, as well as for anyone who's going through or surviving a toxic relationship, who's exited or is exiting, how to heal, how to understand what happened to them, understanding the red flags, eventually for, future dating, so they don't get back into that.
So would it be safe to say, Gianny, that a number of these things you're describing, these are professional, you're speaking about professional realm, but it sounds like there are some things also that may be coming from personal realm as well too, right?
For me, yeah.
Yes.
This is definitely a life's calling and mission. Absolutely.
Okay. What was it? I'm so excited about having this conversation here. So pardon me if I kind of jump in every now and then. What was it that led you to decide that this is the thing that you think you should be doing? What led you to this point? Because some people normally have a backstory why they got into it. Like for me, of course, as a clinician myself, like yourself, I have certain backstories that I've shared on my podcast and interviews and so on, and they tend to be the genesis, right, the beginning of our where we are today. So what led you to decide that this may be the thing you need to do, or your calling, your mission, and why you do so well?
Right. So this started many years ago. many years ago. I had been in a long-term marriage, and for 10 years out of the 15 years I was married, we saw couples counseling. We saw all sorts of support and help from professionals, medical, personal development gurus, the whole 9 yards. And the marriage did end up in divorce, although we sought so much help. So here's the thing. My ex-husband and I considered each other best friends. So I ended up divorced and ended up with a lot of resentment towards the industry, not understanding what happened. Why did we invest so much money? And again, we considered each other best friends. And like, why wasn't anyone able to diagnose us properly? Why didn't anyone really provide us a path forward, or at least an understanding onto why we truly were stuck? In the meantime, I decided I would get back to school and get my graduate degree so I can move into this field, so that I was still married at the time, so I could ultimately, my desire was to help us, and then ultimately help other couples. What I unearthed there was that I was a codependent partner. So I knew like I needed to deal with my codependency.
What was it that led you to come to the place of saying because some people hear the word many times, codependency, and they have all this kind of visuals, all this kind of things, and that's codependent, that's codependency. And sometimes, it's really an overused term. So I wonder, when you said that there was a codependency on your part, what was it the things you were doing that would say this was codependent in your behavior? Yeah.
The biggest red flag for me about me being the codependent partner was that I had an agenda for my marriage, and I had an agenda for my husband that he did not necessarily share. Even though that agenda was all about love, right, and restoration.
Well, you had one.
Yeah, but I had an agenda, and I'm like, we're going to get this done, and we're going to get on the right path, and we're going to, get this marriage on track. He wasn't on that track. He thought everything was hunky-dory. He thought the problem was me.
Of course, you're the problem.
Yeah. And the other one's like, everything's great. So he was on the everything's great. You've got an emotional disturbance. You've got the problem. Of course. So I realized while I was in school, okay, so I'm codependent and I'm trying to drag somebody through life. Yeah, my agenda is, we want to have a better relationship and a better place for us to grow our family. But that wasn't his agenda. So that wasn't what he wanted. And so I started to go through a healing journey for myself as I went through my education. But I still focus on couples therapy instead of individual therapy. And I would say that's actually my biggest regret while I was married, that all of my investment with, like the healing, paying people to help us was more on the marriage side versus just helping me and getting through my depression, my anxiety, and my emotional deregulation. Because all that pain of disconnection in our marriage was causing me to become depressed and anxious and emotionally deregulated. So I should have just, being that we were not on the same page on what the problems were, I should have gotten my own individual therapy while I was married. But I did not.
That's a very important point you're making, I think, because I think so many people, as married couples, they forget that they also are individual, and they're bringing issues to the table. And sometimes they may need to look in the mirror and say, maybe we're possibly, could there be something that I am bringing over here in our relationship? So let me ask this question, Gianny, before you keep unpacking those issues you're describing. Where did you get your information about marriage? Because you had an agenda about what marriage should look like. I wonder, what informed you about what marriage should look like? Where did that come from for you about how marriage should look and how you were hoping that would be in your own personal relationship?
I think there's multiple areas that comes from. It comes from, I'm Latina, I am Christian. So therefore I have a Judeo-Christian value system that marriage is between, two people, and they ultimately, hopefully, if they're still young, if they're getting married while they're young, they might want to grow family. Because I was 25 and I wanted children, eventually, not at 25,
right.
I had a career path. So, so I wanted children. I wanted to be in a marriage that we would grow beyond a party of two. And that necessarily was not my ex-husband's agenda. He wanted a life partner. He wanted someone who would be a companion to him, that we would travel together, that we would, live and share responsibilities in a home together. But growing beyond the party of two was not his agenda. It was mine.
So you both
a lot of humanity.
So you had two different ideas about what marriage was. So you come in. So was that something that you knew ahead before you got married, that he have this a different idea of marriage and you had a different idea, or that you discovered that after you got married? How did that come about?
That's a great question. We talked about all of that. The situation was that I wasn't ready, and neither was he. At age 25, I was not ready for a family, and he's a little older, but he wasn't ready, even though he was in his 30s. So I then, by 29, became fully ready to become a mom, and he never did. And so that started. But our issues started even before that, but that was one of the issues that broke us. We were emotionally, what I discovered was that once I went through school and went through the divorce, then I was able to understand what his diagnosis was besides mine. My diagnosis too. And my ex-husband, he's technically, he's like a good person, but he was born with developmental issues that led him to have a personality disorder. So he has a obsessive compulsive personality disorder. He also is on the spectrum, most likely on the autistic side, even though that's been removed from our vocabulary. And he also had, and still does have, high narcissistic traits, because being born with so many issues, he had to be in self-preservation. So he was in a capsule, but he was a sweet person, and he didn't mean anything harm towards humanity or me or anybody. So, you see all the goodness inside of these individuals and you love them as they are, but there's stuff that don't jive. So we were very disconnected emotionally and intimately. Our intimacy was also quite dysfunctional. So all those things were hurting us even before my desire and need to have babies moved in. So now, that just was the icing on the cake. Then I'm like,
what were some of the things that he did that you would say this was narcissistic in his behavior, and what did you try to do when you were experiencing them to either manage or how did you cope? How did you get through those moments? So what are the things he did? Because I hear this very often, right? A spouse may say, my husband or my wife is very narcissistic. And I'm saying, okay, tell me more about what does that mean? Because that word can be overused and abused and thrown around every day. Today, everybody is narcissistic, right? So I wonder for you, what was your experience in your relationship with your husband that you would say these were narcissistic behavior? What was he doing, and how did you survive that?
Yeah. Back then, we weren't using that term, so I could remember, post-divorce, that I can now label properly what I was dealing with. Right. So when I was married, that vocabulary was not even available to us. We were not using that term that much. That came after the elections and all that stuff in the last, decade.
Yes.
I've been divorced for more than a decade. So, okay. So he lived in a bubble, in a really secure little bubble for himself. And I was outside of that bubble, even though he loved me and put me on a pedestal. So when he loved me, he showed me his love through his own lenses. He could not move through his lenses into mine, such as the 5 love languages. And we learned that, hey, we have to offer love to our partner in the way they receive love, right? So that was one of the cues that I was getting, there's something's wrong here. He's so sweet. He's such a nice person, but there's something wrong here. He doesn't seem to understand me. It doesn't matter how I speak or how I ask or how I describe what my needs are. He doesn't seem to understand beyond a certain level. So intellectually, we're good, but anything below the neck point, complete disconnection. So it would have been easier for me to throw myself against the wall and get a better response from the wall than I would from him. And I'm just, and when you're dealing with someone who's actually sweet and nice and doesn't respond to you and doesn't get you, it is actually more of a torment, because you can't put your finger on why is this happening. It was a very it was 15 years of emotional torment, if you ask me.
I can imagine how frustrating that must have been, because you're trying to connect with him. He is, he's sweet and nice, but also not knowing how to do that. Did you find any kind of controlling element? Because if he's not necessarily kind of giving back to you what you're hoping to get, and he has his own agenda. What was his agenda like for you? Because it sounds to me that your attempt was to connect with him. He either showed his inability or not the capacity to do so, but you were still trying to. Like you just said, for example, throwing stuff against the wall might get a better response. So did you find in his own actions, were there anything that came from him that was controlling or in mood? What are the things that caused you to think, wait, something may be off here? I can't put my finger on it, but something might be off here.
Yeah. I pointed this out to him multiple times that he was passive aggressive. Mm. That was something that I did bring up to him, but he didn't understand that was the way he learned to cope with life. So to him, that was the appropriate way of handling things instead of just being straightforward, honest, genuine, authentic about things. He would rather be passive aggressive. Mm. So that was something that I would say, hey, I could see it, especially with most other people. I didn't see it as much when it came towards me. I only saw it later as the divorce situation was flaring. But while you're in it, you don't see it that way. You only see it when it's happening to other people.
Mm. And this is such a very important point you're making. I find though sometimes in your work as a clinician, you also probably hear these stories where a spouse may come or a couple may show up and they're finger pointing, right? And they're simply saying that, my husband or my wife don't get me, or they feel like they're like frustrated. They're talking to a wall, or sometimes they feel like the person wants to make sure that they're bent and they become like them. They're trying to make them over into somebody else. And that's going to be frustrating. So what was it that led you to the point of saying this marriage or him to say this marriage is probably not going to work? And how did that end where the conclusion was made like, what, a divorce might be best for us?
So after 15 years of marriage and the last 10 years out of the 15 were in and out of therapy and different specialists, my need for having a family, my need for emotional and sexual intimacy were so great that it divided us. At that point, the romantic love that I had for him had disappeared. I loved him more as a family member, like a brother. It was no longer that romantic love. It really evaporated. So at that point, I'm like, I'd rather just keep him as a friend than a husband, because to me, this was not functioning as a husband and wife team anymore. It never, I kept trying to find ways to fix it, and it wasn't fixable. We did not want the same things. I finally had to surrender my agenda with him, which is to create this intimate relationship with him that was not possible, at least with the means that we had at that time. I wonder today, now that I think, are more clear on these symptoms on adult men, because back then, these symptoms, like the diagnosis weren't really made, but I think this is like 20 years later, Mm. So, today I think we're better at diagnosing these problems in adult men. And so I think now that if we're better at diagnosing and now we have better treatments because we know we can support a lot of this stuff today. But back then we didn't have it. So I'm wondering if I had been married 10 years later versus 10 years prior, if that would have made a big difference. So that's a big deal. Yeah,
it's true. So how did your faith play out? Because did you feel like, you got married, you believe that God brought you together at that stage of life, and as you mentioned, that kind of shaped your view of marriage. Was there anything about your faith that either got rocked or you felt, what did you feel about God and you and the relationship and how things are going and how it's ending up? Did that in any way kind of rock your faith?
Okay, so I've been a Christian since I was a child. Mm-hmm. And so I have like a childlike faith, meaning not like it's not mature, because it is, but meaning when I came to the Lord spoke to my heart and said I had a calling. So I believe that. So I know God is real. He speaks to my heart, right? So as a child, you're like, oh, this is awesome. So you don't question it. Like, you're like, this is it. This is God. So when I went through the difficulties in my marriage and started dealing with depression, started dealing with all this anxiety, the Lord spoke to me again, and I felt like the Lord made it clear that this was my path, that this was the calling that I had. So at that time, I thought that the Lord was going to heal my marriage and that both of us would be on this track together to restoring other relationships and being like a power couple who can be on stage because the two of us have no problems in speaking in public and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. I thought that was God's plan. Well, we have one idea and God has another. Mm-hmm. God's plan for me was not that. It was for me to go through the disheartening, this whole chaotic world. When we go through a divorce, it's very chaotic. We have to figure out who we are on our own without our life partner that we, most of us who got married in our 20s, we grew up with our partners. So I had to unravel who Gianny really was on my own after that divorce. Then comes another relationship. The next relationship is me involved with a sweet and charming sociopath. Oh boy, it only got better after my divorce when I came to the traumatic experiences. So through that whole journey, I had to depend on the Lord, trust that his word to me was on point, that I had a purpose, that I had a calling, and that this journey that I'm on is part of that purpose and calling. So I didn't question the Lord. I tried to stay humble, and I did get angry at times because I'm like, well, if this is my calling, why are you making it so difficult for me? It has been a very difficult journey for me. Yeah. And yet this is a path he has called me to serve humanity, to understand the pain when love doesn't work for you, and the partners that you keep attracting are not healthy, and they only use and exploit you. But with that, I understand what is right, what is wrong. I understand the skill sets that we need to create and bring in the healthy, the love, the compassion, the understanding. So it's not through our best experiences that we learn what's right and wrong. It's through our worst experiences on this planet. So God has redeemed all of that for me. And he has continued to use me very greatly with my clients, because God knows I love my job and my clients adore me. I have really great results with my clients, and it's because I have such heart and such depth and such wisdom because of the trials and tribulations and the pain and the suffering that I myself have had to go through.
Wow. Gianny, thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that. I can hear the pain, but also the redemptive power of God being able to say, okay, Gianny, I still have a work for you to do. I still have a purpose for you. And out of your pain and your ashes, that God can create beauty. And that's what he does, right? And we know that at night there's weeping that endures for the night, but joy comes in the morning. So God has used all of that and really have led you to not only to work with your clients today, but also to write a best-selling book. And God has, so he redeemed all of that and said, Gianny, I have a plan still. I still have a plan for you. And so that book came out of your pain and is now reaching a lot of people around the world, basically. Tell us a little bit about that. What was it for you to begin to say, I need to put this in writing? And what is the book, the main objective of the book that you have written? And the name as well, too.
Okay. So I wrote From Love Trauma to Fearless Love, 7 Tango Steps for Breaking Free from Narcissists and Predators. And that became an Amazon bestseller, and it's received various awards, including the New Author of the Year 2020 by Audiobook Reviewer. When I released
Congratulations.
Thank you. So after my divorce, I moved to South Florida, and I became the target of a sweet and charming sociopath. I was not into him. I did not care for him. I ran like any smart girl would. But he knew how to chase. And so ultimately he was able to trigger my chemistry. And once my chemistry was triggered, the rest is history, because now we think we're in love and we're going to try to make it work and whatever. So the relationship ended with me being ultimately, ended up with sexual trauma. And therefore and he abandoned the relationship, and that relationship lasted about almost a year and a half. So he abandoned the relationship. I ended up with sexual trauma. And so I needed to go through my healing journey. So as I went through my healing journey, one of the things that I did was I signed up for writing a book in 8 weeks. Not that you would write a book in 8 weeks, but at least you would get it started in 8 weeks. And I knew it was time for me to sit down and write a book. I wasn't sure what kind of book I was going to write at the time. It was either going to be a self-help book for couples, communication, intimacy, whatever, a memoir, or some sort of like fiction, fantasy. I wasn't sure, but those were the 3 things I was looking at. The instructor said, don't worry about it, because I'm like, I don't know what to do. She's like, don't worry about it. You just start writing, and then it will all sort itself out. And that's exactly what happened. I started writing. And then the story started to unfold. I started to use things from my past, things from the present moment, things that were interesting to me. I fabricated something. So ultimately it's a fantasy based on some facts, which is based, usually that's how writers write anyway. We pull things from reality and we create stories. So as I wrote this journey, it became a journey of healing for me. I was able to put together the love story of Elena and Cesar, which ultimately was the love story between myself and this sweet and charming sociopath. And then I was able to look at, where did this relationship come from? What was underneath? What were the traumas that allowed me to have still chemistry with a man like this? So ultimately what that book was, it was this powerful book to help me to be set free from the transgenerational traumas and curses and things that come through our genealogy and our DNA and our family heritage. So I was able to clear these traumas and break that cycle of me having any kind of vulnerabilities to these sociopathic, narcissistic individuals that are only interested in exploiting and using other people for their personal lives and not to edify another human being.
So a person who would read that book today, so who might be the person who would be the direct, recipient of that book? Who would be that person you have in mind who would say, Gianny, that book sounds fascinating. It sounds very interesting. Why would I want to read that? And what might be happening in their lives that they would say, this is a book for me?
Anyone breaking free from toxic relationships, anyone who wants to stop being vulnerable to exploitive people, anyone who's been through sexual trauma, anyone who's exited or is exiting a relationship with a narcissist. This book is your journey of healing. It's going to get you on that path to finally start recognizing what happened to you, what were the pieces that were missed, the red flags that were missed. And it's a journey of empowerment and freedom.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I like that. That really sounds very, it piques your interest, right? It's like, oh man, that sounds like that's me. I want to get that book. If someone is here listening today and would like to get a copy of that book, where would they go to get a copy of that book?
The book is on Amazon, and they can either put in my name on Amazon, which is Gianny Adamo, Gianny Adamo, or they could put in From Love Trauma to Fearless Love, 7 Tango Steps for Breaking Free from Narcissists and Predators.
That's awesome. And those links will be in the description that follows this video. But also, Gianny, what are you working on today that our audience today might be, not only fascinated with your story, but also you might, you mentioned something about having an offer, something that could actually entice them, right? What are some things that you would want to say to them that would really give them a nudge to say, hey, you know what? I need to know more.
Okay, so as you are aware, I am a licensed mental health counselor, and I focus on both individual and couples counseling. And I also offer intensives, and I'm launching couples retreats this fall in 2023. So for anyone who's interested in working with me, whether it's through counseling, coaching, the retreats, I am offering a free 15-minute consultation, which they can just go on my website, which is fearlesslove.net, and click on the free 15-minute consultation. And there they can just fill out the information and schedule their own time that works for them. Or they can go to like the back of the website there. There's like a contact form. They can fill that out and ask their questions, especially if they have any questions around the retreat. If they have any interest in that. In the retreat, what I'm offering there is it's going to be for individual couples and families. So it's going to be it's going to be like a high-end experience here in downtown Delray Beach at one of our beautiful hotels, one couple or one family at a time. And it's going to be highly curated to them. And it's just going to be my team and the client, the family or the couple.
And it's at fearlesslove.net, you said, right?
That's correct. Fearlesslove.net.
And of course, I'll have the link in available to in the description that follows this episode. So as those of you who are listening, watching this video, make sure you check the link. You check the description. You'll see the links there. All that Gianny has mentioned today. Gianny, we're coming to the end of our time, and I cannot tell you how much. There's so many different things I would love to unpack. And of course, we could take all day to do this. But if people want to follow you and get to know more about you and to see the work you're doing, just in general, I mentioned about the website, but is there a social media place that you do content or wherever else that they may be able to even get to learn more about you?
Yes, I am on Facebook under Fearless Love LLC. I'm on LinkedIn under Gianny Adamo. I'm on Instagram, but Instagram for me is more difficult because I write a lot, and Instagram is just like pictures, so it's like a weird situation. I have yet to. It's Gianny Adamo under Instagram, but I feel like I have less of a contact there. And I would say if they go on my website and fill in the contact form, I will. That will also help me because we can put you on the newsletter, and I have newsletters that go out with really great content. I'm a published author. I have lots of articles that have been syndicated in various different locations. So I provide quality information for you to read my blogs and articles to help you with your healing journey or repairing your relationship wherever you are. My content is really good for that.
So I really think the fearlesslove.net and really get in contact with you and just really start having an interaction. I think it's a great way to get even more help in their own journey. So I think that's a great provision right there. So thank you for sharing that with us. So Jen, as we're kind of wrapping up here, is there any one last thing? I know we covered quite a few things and stories and all the different things, but if there's any one last comment, statement, something you would like to leave with our audience, and I maybe not have asked a question or you even have never had a chance to say, what would that be that you would like to leave with us?
Yes. What I'd like to leave with the audience is healing is possible. And sometimes healing may look a little bit different than what you had hoped for. Because for me, it looks very different than the journey I thought I was on. The Lord has healed me. I feel like a rock star inside, like happy, free, empowered. I have love. I have love that goes out to the world, love that comes back to me. And so I feel whole and complete. But yeah, it looks very different than what I had pictured in my 20s and 30s and even my early 40s. And there's one more thing I want to say, and it's this journey of healing sets us free. But what is freedom? Ultimately, our freedom isn't just to do anything and everything willy-nilly, right? Because people who do all of that end up with other diagnoses such as addicts, narcissists, because they have no filters. They just keep on doing this thing, and that thing is destroying their lives. So our freedom is to ultimately, when we have this level of healing and freedom, is free to be our authentic selves and be able to give and receive love in the way we're designed. That's what freedom is all about. So when we go through this level of healing, it's for freedom, but the freedom is to be restored back to our authentic ability to love and be loved.
Wow. That's really deep. And I think it was very important that you said that. So I appreciate you wrapping up with that piece. And Gianny, I would say thank you so very much for taking the time to be here with us on the show, because I think that this is going to be very helpful from a personal and a professional level here. And somebody who've lived the life, somebody who's gone through it. It's not like you have just, is a theory or this is just a book knowledge. This is personal, but also, of course, the book knowledge has come alongside and give you a deeper insight and to help people. So I want to say thank you for taking the time to be with us today and to deposit in so much information. And for you who are listening, remember that make sure you contact Gianny at fearlesslove.net. And also you can, if you have a question to ask, and when you're watching this, just make a comment in the comment section, and she'll also see that there and can respond to your comment as well. So thank you for taking the time to listen and to watch. And Gianny, thank you for being here, and God bless you. And you really have, in service to him, done the job he's called you to do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, 𝐀𝐿𝐫. It's such a joy. And this morning I woke up so happy knowing that I would be on your show. So thank you so much for having me.
Amen. It's mutual. Thank you so much. And there you have it, my friends. I hope you got a lot from this episode. Make sure you connect with Gianny on her website, as she mentioned in this episode. If you found value in this episode, make sure you leave a rating and a review to help this show get more visibility. I thank you for that as well. And if you haven't yet taken the Happier Marriage Assessment to gauge how your marriage is doing and what you can do to make it even better, I want to encourage you to do so at happiermarriagesecrets.com/quiz. happiermarriagesecrets.com/quiz. So thanks again for listening. And here's our announcer.
We've come to the end of another exciting show. And if you enjoyed this podcast, 1, make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2, subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3, get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at 𝐀𝐿𝐫𝐺𝑟𝑎NT.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's 𝐀𝐿𝐫𝐺𝑟𝑎NT.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.